You can tell. We were talking about the different types of nefesh bahamis that people have. There's someone like an ox, there's someone more gentle, like a lamb. You could also tell, like by sports, that people are attracted to. There are certain sports that is in a cage fighting, as opposed to golf, right? There's milder types of sports too, right? And I imagine the people that are attracted to the cage fighting, right? And they like that type of a energy. They connect that type of an energy. I imagine to them that sports like swimming and golf, and tennis, it's probably a lot of gentler sports. It's like they're bored by that. They're not interested in that. While people that are attracted to mild sports like golf probably are like shocked by the cage fighting. What do you think?
I think you're onto something much larger than you even know. Because the people who market what you would call the commerce sports are trying to win the extreme sports fans. They can't. They're not interested.
They're not interested, right?
Why ruin this sport to attract the guy who's not interested? I don't understand the whole strategy.
On the other hand, everyone's composed of everything. Everyone's got a little bit of this and a little bit of that.
How would you feel if, I don't know where you put hockey in there. It's on baseball and hockey.
Baseball?
And hockey.
Hockey's violent.
Or it's a beautiful skating.
It's a nice sport, but they like to fight a lot, right?
So it's rugby.
Rugby. Yeah. Okay, anyway. So we were talking about we tend to have like discussions when we're learning, which is okay, but we didn't really get that far in the Maamar in chapter Gimel. We started talking about that ein adam chayta elin kain, ein adam over avera elin kain nichnas bo ruach shtus. A person doesn't commit an avera, a sin, unless there enters them a spirit of folly, unless they become possessed. They become possessed by a spirit of folly. Now that spirit of folly isn't something from the outside. It's inside of us. That's from our nefesh bahamis, right? It may get ignited by something from the outside. That's why we have to protect our eyes. We have to be careful of what we see, because the eyes are the windows, the gateway to our nefesh, to our minds. We have to protect our ears, what we hear, we have to protect ourselves, right? And
without totally isolating.
There are people that totally isolate themselves. That's the Haredi reaction, right, to the coming down of the ghetto walls, right? There were a number of reactions when the ghetto walls came down. There weren't before the ghetto walls came down a few hundred years ago. I don't think there were. I mean, I'm sure there was levels of observance, but I don't think it had really like a Haredi world. There were different reactions.
Right.
There was the Haredi reaction. Okay, we got to put up our own walls to protect ourselves, and it makes sense, right? It makes sense. You can't argue with that. It makes sense. But on the other hand, it creates a very isolated community, and that comes along with certain issues of its own, right?
Back a couple of hundred years, they had the shuttles that were always under oppression from the government and from the rest. So they had to put up the walls.
Yeah, Jews invented the ghetto for themselves, right? The story.
I don't know about that.
I think so.
Really?
Venice.
Really?
It was the first ghetto, right?
I don't know. Well, Jews always gathered together, and up until the times of. Yeah.
They invented the ghetto for these reasons. They didn't invent that you couldn't leave it.
Oh, there you go. Right. Within the Jewish world, it was a warm, caring world, and the Gentile world was a dangerous world. So the Jews kept to themselves, and Kodesh Baruch Hu shows us, Nikol Amin, right? An Levad Yishkon, you're a nation that will dwell alone, right? That's what the Kodesh Baruch Hu says about us. We're a nation that will dwell alone. We have to filter out the Gentile influences. So when the ghetto walls, either physical walls or spiritual walls came down, and Jews now were able to be integrated into society, many Rabbanim said, no, don't integrate into society, because then you'll become assimilated. And others just totally became assimilated. The Reform movement began, and what's his name? The guy that started the Reform movement, his grandchildren married Gentiles. I forget his name. It's not really so important. And then there was Mendelssohn. That's right. And then there was the Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, Torah V'Avoda in Germany, where you have to keep the halacha 100%, but you could still learn. That now the intellectual pursuits and the opportunities of earning a good living, which were close to the Jewish people when the ghetto walls were up, now were available. He said, you can do that, but you still have to remain a 100% halachic Jew, Orthodox observant Jew. And then the Rebbe revolutionized the Jewish world, and that separateness of the Orthodox world and the non-Orthodox Jewish world. The Rebbe sent out shluchim and said, we love you. We're all one nation. Put down the walls between us, like Rabbi Busawankin told my father the first time he went, Father Love Shalom. And my father was a little what's the word? Apprehensive to go. I had met this Chabad Rabbi, and I was starting to go there for Shabbat, and I was starting to get excited about things I was learning, and I was telling my parents. I was living at home. I was unmarried, living at home, and then the rabbi invited my parents to come over for Sukkot. I had met the rabbi in the spring. My father was a little apprehensive because here he was this non-observant Jew going to this Orthodox rabbi. And in his mind, the Orthodox people don't look too kindly on non-observant Jews. They look at them as, pariahs, I don't know, outsiders, people that left the fold. But
something happened though. There I was wrong. Because I used to think Reform Judaism was a practical response. In other words, we're not changing Judaism, we just can't do it. But then it became like its own.
But it was changing Judaism.
Huh?
It was changing Judaism.
Well, yeah, it started to change the tenets of Judaism, not just halakha. The original thing was we're not bound by halakha because it's impossible where we live. But then it became changing actual definitions of Jewish doctrine.
What do they say? A slippery slope,
Right.
Once you start playing around with God's Torah, and you say, well, this isn't important. That's not important. So how do you determine what is?
They all had veto power. This one.
There's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos which says you should be like the disciples of Aaron. Love peace, pursue peace. Love the brios, love the creation, and bring them close to Torah. So the Rebbe says two things on love the creation. Even if a person's only merit is that he's a created being, love him. Hashem created him. He has purpose. Try to help him to recognize his true value, to recognize his potential, to try to reach his potential. But through love and through simcha. That's the way of this generation. The Rebbe said, only through simcha. Only through simcha we can bring Mashiach. That's what we need. Simcha, love, and mekarvim l'Torah on that, and bring them close to Torah. The Rebbe points out, see what the Mishnah says, bring them close to Torah. not the other way around. Don't change the Torah to bring the Torah to them. Bring the Torah to them, but the Torah the way it is. Torah Hashem Tamima, Mashivas Nafesh. There's a pasuk in Tehillim which says the Torah of Hashem is Tamima, is pure, is perfect, is whole. Mashivas Nafesh, it restores the soul. So some point out, only when it's pure and whole and you don't mess with it and you don't water it down, it restores the soul. But if you start, what's the word, liquidating? No.
No, I know it.
You know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
Liquidating it down.
Watering it.
You start watering it down, you start changing it. It's not Hashem's Torah. You can't change Hashem's Torah. If it's the truth, it's the truth. And you gotta get yourself to get to the truth. You gotta move yourself always in the direction of the truth. That I'm thinking the way that the Torah wants me to think. I'm speaking the way the Torah wants me to think. I'm acting the way the Torah wants me to think. Right? And not making excuses and not making up narratives that aren't truthful.
So changing baseball to please extreme sports fans is the metaphor. It really is.
1 second. Okay, wait. Kutzker Rebbe is a very sharp and clever, sharp, seichel Rebbe. He said he had a lot. There's actually a book of all his sayings. I don't know if all his sayings, a collection of his sayings that are remembered. He had a lot of very interesting sayings. One of them was, I prefer a Russia that knows he's a Russia than a tzaddik that knows he's a tzaddik. Because a tzaddik that thinks he's a tzaddik, right? Well, how's he going to grow? He's there. A Russia who knows he's a Russia, he knows he's got work to do. He's got work to do. They once asked the Frierdiker Rebbe, we're learning a Maamar of the Frierdiker Rebbe. Yeah, Basi Legani is a Maamar of the Frierdiker Rebbe. They once asked the Frierdiker Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, this exact question about, well, isn't it better to have some type of watered down Judaism than no Judaism at all? With what's happening, with assimilation, isn't it better to have something than nothing? So the Frierdiker Rebbe told him and said, if there's a fire, and they said, they gave a mushal. They said, when you don't have clean water, you can use dirty water. You can use dirty water to put out a fire. If there's a fire burning in the Jewish people of assimilation, right? So of course, the best thing is clean water, pure Torah, right? But if it's dirty water, also puts out a fire. That was the proof that they wanted to bring to the previous Rebbe. So the previous Rebbe said, yeah, that's true if it's water, but what if it looks like water, but it's really kerosene?
Wow.
So anyway, my father, Allah Hashem, went to Rabbi Brusalankin. He came back smiling. And he said, Rabbi Brusalankin told him, he said, Chaim, he said, your whole tfisa, look at it. I'm sure he didn't say your whole tfisa, the way you're looking at things is wrong. But it made a paradigm shift in my father, because the way he was looking at it was, there's the Orthodox, and then there's the non-Orthodox. And Rabbi Brusalankin just told him, there's 613 mitzvahs. Right? We don't have to keep all of them. The more you keep, the better. That's it. We're all Jews. And you're going to say over here is good, over here is bad. You have to keep as many as you can. Since the Basi Mikdash was destroyed, so there's not really 613 mitzvahs that we can actually keep today. There's only a few hundred. But we still say the 613, because when Mashiach comes and Basi Mikdash is going to be rebuilt,
Even less outside Israel.
Even less outside Israel. The Jewish people are going to be back in Israel, so Torah is going to be fulfilled in its entirety once again. Bezrat Hashem will get out of this gullus immediately. Enough of our sufferings in this deep and long and difficult exile. You wanted to say something about sports?
I think I said it.
You said it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So, So we said a person doesn't commit an Aveira unless a spirit of folly enters him. So again, that spirit of folly is in him. That nefesh bahamis, that animal soul, can be directed in. It depends who's the balabayit, who's the ruler of the house, right? Are you going to let the tavot, the desires, the physical desires that a person has for things of this world, are they going to be the ruler of how you live your life, or is your seichel understanding what's the right way, what's the truthful way to live? Is that going to be the ruler? Who's going to rule, right? That's what it's all about. It's all about that we should become the rulers of ourselves. We should rule our ruach. We should rule our nefesh. And Hashem helps. Hashem helps. If a Jew wants to come close, Hashem helps. It says in the Tanya that Hashem, there's a pasuk in Tehillim which says, I don't remember the exact wording, but the wording is that Hashem that a person is David HaMelech, I think, request over there to be saved from shoiftei nafshe, shoiftei, the plural, the judges of his soul, judges of his soul. So the Alter Rebbe says on that pasuk that there are two, that Hashem should, David Melech prays to Hashem to save him from the judges of his soul. So Hashem says there's always two judges, there's always two authority figures when a person has a decision to make. Yeah? His nefesh bahamis may want to go after the physical desires of this world, but then his nefesh elokis, his godly soul, says, no, what do you mean? That's not the right way to do it. That's not the right way to live. That's not what Hashem wants. It's against Hashem's ratzon. No, you have to not do that. You have to desist from doing that. So me Ravi Asay Tov. So the Tanya says that Hashem comes, and Hashem is the machriya. When you have two justices in a beis din, one says yes, one says no. So the third judge, he's the machriya. He's the one who, it goes according to the third judge's ruling. So the Alter Rebbe says Hashem comes, and Hashem aids the Jew. Hashem comes along and aids the Jew. And if it wouldn't be for that aid of Hashem, it would be very difficult for the Jew to overcome his passions. But Hashem aids the Jew. He aids the godly soul that it should have the authority and it should have the rulership over the person. But the person has to want that. Like it says in the Gemara, if someone opens his heart the size of the eye of a needle, it's not too big. So Hashem will open for him the apertures of heaven, the windows of heaven. That's pretty big. We have to do our efforts, and Hashem responds. Hashem will help us. We just have to make the efforts. Hashem helps. So this spirit of folly is from the Klippa, in the Sidrachim. It's called shtus, and it's called folly. Al derech melech zoken v'kosim, like it says about the Yetzer Hara, that the Yetzer Hara is an old and foolish king. And the side of evil that was created in order to give us free choice covers over the light and the revelation. That godliness, that godliness is the truth and the life. Like it says in Yirmiyahu, in the Tanakh, that Hashem is the God of truth and He is the God of life. And this spirit of folly covers over the truth. And it covers over the godly life force. That's why it's called a klipa, which is like a klipa, just like the skin of a fruit covers over the tasty fruit that's inside. What do you call that? Skin of a fruit? The peel. A peel. Kain haruach shtus bechasa umaylim umastir ala orva gili elokus. So too, this spirit of folly covers over and hides the light and the revelation of godliness and the truth. Right? I mean, if it's the truth, and it's revealed to us it's the truth, so why would a Jew ever sin? If he understands that sins separate him from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a Jew would never sin.
HaKadosh Baruch Hu invented the Yetzer Hara.
What?
That's my response.
I didn't hear what you just said.
I sinned because Hashem invented the Yetzer Hara.
That's right. Exactly. In order to give us free choice, Hashem put a power in the world that tries to make us deviate from the
I
truth.
would say not only free choice, gives us the power to overcome and earn the ultimate reward.
Okay, right, certainly. וזהו הסיבה מה שאפשר אשר האדם יכול להיות חס ושלום עובד עבירה. And this is the reason why it's actually possible for a person, God forbid, to do a sin. דלכאורה, איך אפשר אדם אשר יבוא אדם לידי עבירה? How is it? Because how it really, if you think about it, how is it possible for a person to do a sin? Because the person understands. He doesn't. Okay, he's going to explain. Because it's precisely this, that he doesn't feel that by doing the sin, he's cutting himself off from godliness. He doesn't feel that. He's not aware of that. If he was aware of it, he wouldn't do the sin. Who's going to cut themselves off from their life source? Anyone's going to normally, any normal person, any rational person is going to cut themselves off from their life source?
Unless it's an addiction.
Right. Okay, so that's a certain abnormality that's in the person's soul. They're addicted, and it's bad for them, but they're doing it anyway, like smoking or drugs or drinking or overeating or whatever it is. There are a lot of addictions. Yeah, you're right. But there's the life force HaKadosh Baruch Hu created. He's the life force. Okay, he's the life. Hu chaya chaim. He's the life of everything. Like we say in our davening, and like it's one of the beliefs of Hashem. He's the life force of everything. But Hashem created a whole system that if a person wants to draw down from a different type of life force, he can. And it's not when I say a different type of life source, what I mean to say is that Hashem empowered evil. He empowered evil in order to give us free choice, that there should be a Yetzer Hara, there should be a power. And by empowering that evil, he gave over a certain life force to that power of evil, that it should be able to exist. He's the one who keeps it into existence. However, the existence he gave over to evil is just enough that they need, just enough that evil needs to exist. But every time we do averos, we give more power. We give more power to the side of evil to have more influence over us, to draw down more life force. But the life force that evil draws down is all from Kedusha. It just gets hidden within the evil, and it gets covered up, and it becomes warped and distorted. And if we want to chas v'shalom drink from those waters, right? They may look very sweet, but they're bitter waters. They may taste very sweet, but ultimately they're bad for us. But Hashem gives us a choice to do that, and that's what it says in the Torah in the book of Devarim. I think it's Parshas Nitzavim. That it says, Ubachartem b'chaim, you should choose life. We discussed on a number of occasions. If you read if you just continue, you don't take it out of context, you read the next pasuk, it says you should choose life to serve, to love, and to serve Hashem. That's the life you should choose, because there is another way of living, and that's not through loving and serving Hashem. It's just through living and following the instincts of your animal soul, just like an animal is hunting after its pleasures, right? But by an animal, the pleasures are equal to its needs, yeah? But by a human being, the pleasures could be pleasures that have nothing to do with his needs. But nevertheless, there's still pleasures that human beings hunt after or search after. So that's another type of life. Hashem doesn't want us to choose that life. Why would anyone choose death? I put before you life and death. Life and death. Blessing and curse. Choose life. What kind of choice is that? That's ridiculous. Who would choose death? Nobody would choose death. But the next pasuk says what kind of life to choose. A life of serving Hashem, of loving Hashem, of doing His mitzvahs. Because there's another type of life. We can see how people live their lives. We can see, look around. A lot of people live their lives. They know nothing. They sense nothing. They're kind of like, they're not animals. They're people, right? But like the Maamar said, if a person doesn't have endness, he doesn't have godliness, he doesn't have the understanding that he's here for a mission, that God sent him here for a mission, so he's like a lion. He's just like an animal. He just goes after what he wants. And he might be honest, he might be not a thief, right? Because the teva of a Jew is to be good. A Jew has that teva, yeah, because he has even his animal soul. It doesn't come from the totally impure forces of evil, the three klipos, the shalosh klipos of Tameos, it comes from klipos Noiga, which has an element of goodness to it. And that's why it says about Bnei Yisrael, that Bnei Yisrael by their nature are Rachmanim, by Shanim, Ugimulei Chasadim, we're compassionate, we're not arrogant, by Shanim, like modest, not arrogant, and Gimulei Chasadim, we do a lot of chesed. You see that, even non-observant Jews give a lot of tzedakah. Sometimes they give it to the wrong causes, but nevertheless, they give, that comes from their benevolence, that's part of their soul. We have to direct it in the right, we have to direct our animal souls in the right way. So, someone who sees the truth, yeah, so he has to try to change himself to live a life in accordance with the truth. And that's avodah, that's our avodah. That's our avodah. And the powers of evil were given the ability to hide the fact from a Jew that when he does an Avera, he's actually separating himself from Elokus, from godliness. And the Jew doesn't feel it. He doesn't feel that by doing this Avera, he's separating himself from godliness. And it appears to him that he's just a great Jew like he was before. But if he knew the truth like it really is, that through the chet and avon, through sinning, he's becoming separate from Elokus. He wouldn't do the Avera. God forbid. For any reason, he wouldn't do it. No matter how much his passion was or how much it would cost him to desist, he wouldn't do it because he would sense that he was disconnecting himself from Hashem, and he wouldn't want to do that. He wouldn't want to disconnect himself from Hashem. Lefi shehateva shel kol Yisrael she'eino roitze b'shum oifen ve'eino yachol klal liyos nifra melikus. That it's the nature of every Jew that he doesn't want and he can't disconnect himself from Elokus. I understand he doesn't want. That's his true nature. But how can he say he can't? We just said if he doesn't Avera, he's disconnecting himself from Elokus. So true, he's disconnecting himself, but it's only temporary. It's a real disconnection and it's not a real disconnection at the same time.
I think there's a gray area.
What's the gray area?
Connecting to me would be taking off your tzitzit before you do it, like that's gonna hide you from God while you do this, as opposed to God's here and I got to do this.
Yeah, but the godliness within himself, he doesn't sense. And he doesn't sense how that godliness, his soul, is being disconnected. There's different effects of different averas. Not every avera is chorus. Chorus is one of the severe averas. All averas are severe, yeah? But the punishments, when the Torah discusses averas, so the Torah makes a distinction between certain averas have no punishments, like if a person doesn't fulfill a positive commandment, there's no actual punishment that the court gives to that person. The person has to do tshuva because he didn't fulfill something he needed to fulfill. Yeah, he has a mission and he didn't fulfill it, and Hashem's going to say to each person, no, why didn't you fulfill? I gave you this opportunity, right? Why didn't you? The poor person came to you. He stuck out his head. Why didn't you? You had money in your pocket. Why didn't you put money in his? Why didn't you give him? Hashem's going to come to each person for whatever it is. Say, why didn't you do it? We have to do tshuva. Yeah, but there's no. The court doesn't give punishments. Then there are certain cases where the court gives punishments. Right. The lowest form of punishments that the court gives is flagging. You heard of flagging? Lashes. And then flogging. Yeah. And then there's I think the only two punishments that the court can give are flogging and the death penalty. Chores, I'm not sure. Not sure. I don't think the court gives any punishment. That's a divine punishment, right? There's also death at the hand. There's also Misa b'dei shamayim. There's Misa b'dei Beis Din. There's the death penalty of the court, and then there's the death penalty that comes from shamayim that the court can't adjudicate. And chores, I think, is one of those things that's from shamayim that a person's cut off. But even when a person's cut off, there remains that spark within it that's always connected to a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Because if we say all the time, every Jew, the neshama hasheni sheyesh b'Yisrael hu chelek elokam Maamar, the second soul that every Jew has, that only Jews have, yeah, is a part of the Kodesh Baruch Hu. So that part of the Kodesh Baruch Hu can never actually be cut off. Can never be cut off. But it can be covered over with a lot of mud and a lot of dirt and a lot of filth and Rahman al-Islam. By the way, and the Gemara says that a court that would give someone the death penalty more than one time in 70 years was considered to be a bloodthirsty court. To actually, even to give lashes, it was very, very difficult. I'm sure it was done sometime in history, right? But it was very difficult, like actually, technically, to do it. I don't remember all the details right now, but I once heard from YY whole shiur about it, that the Jew, it has to be, first of all, a particular avera that's a prohibition that's not chorus. Like eating tray food, okay? It's a prohibition, that's the punishment, is lashes. But how would it actually come about that the court would give lashes? There have to be two witnesses that see the Jew eating the tray food, and they have to tell him, you're eating tray food, you're going to get lashed, you're going to get lashes by the court. And within the time that it takes to say, Shalom Alecha Rebbe, which is about, a second and a half, 2 seconds, Shalom Alecha Rebbe, he has to respond, I know and I don't care. There may be other conditions too. But if he doesn't respond, If he says, leave me alone, if he says, I don't care, well, it may not be enough. He has to say, I know and I don't care. I know and I don't care. And continue eating. That's hard. You'd have to be a fool to get lashes. Right? You could get out of it so easily. The person wants to eat the tray food. Two people come by. He just says, he doesn't say anything. He just ignores them. He can't get lashes. So that's just an aside. The actual technical.
How bad is a Jew as a person? If they grew up not observant, don't even barely know about it. If they do the 7-0, I lost.
So they're a good person. They're maintaining a good world. But they're not fulfilling their mission as a Jew. That's good enough for a non-Jew. But for a Jew, he has a different mission. Different mission. There's once a story that Rabbi Chaim Ozer Grodensky, did I tell you the story?
No.
He was not a chassid. He was a great Talmud Chacham and a great righteous person, and he was the Av Beis Din of Vilna before World War I. Very brilliant scholar and very well known, probably the leader of the Litvish world, the non-Hasidic Ashkenazi world, one of the leaders. He wasn't a misnagin. He wasn't an anti-chassid. It's okay to be a Litai. It's okay to be a Sephardi. It's okay to be a Chabadnik. It's okay to be whatever you are. Yemenite, it's okay. Be whatever you are. Don't be negative. Don't be an anti.
Right.
I'm against. What are you against? What are you against? There's a lot of different instruments in the orchestra, right? So you play the tuba, another guy plays the trumpet, another guy plays the violin, another guy plays the cello.
You have enough of your own problems.
Huh?
You have enough of your own problems.
He wasn't a misnagin.
Okay.
And he was once, he met this Hasidic Rebbe from Poland, Michiel Meir, forget his last name, and I forget the city he was from, but he was a Gaon. He was a Rebbe that was a Gaon, and his Gaonut, his Torah knowledge and his cleverness was matched only by his piety. He was a very pious person. And he once met this Rebbe, the two men met, and Reb Chaim Ozer said to him, say a word, say a pilpul. A pilpul, you bring questions, and then you bring more questions, and then you give answers, and you bring questions on the answers, until you come to a conclusion, and you bring an entire logical, well thought out Torah lesson. What do they call it? Dvar Torah. A pilpul, He said, say a pilpul. So Rabbi Yechiel Meir said over a pilpul. Chaim Ozer was astounded by the brilliance and the erudition and the depth and the clarity of this pilpul. And he said, wow, he said, I didn't know it. You're a Gavra Rabbah. Gavra Rabbah is a great person. It's an Aramaic expression for a great person. So Rabbi Yechiel Meir said to him, saying a pilpul doesn't make a person, saying a good pilpul doesn't make a person a Gavra Rabbah. So Rabbi Chaim Ozer said, if that doesn't make a person a Gavra Rabbah, what does? So Yechiel Meir said, helping a fellow Jew. So he said, where do you have a proof for that? So he said, from the Gemara. Now, Rav Chaim Ozer knew the entire Shabbos, and he had a tremendous memory. So he took a few moments to think through, where in the Gemara does it say that helping a fellow Jew makes a person a Gavra Rabbah, and he couldn't come up with a source for that. So he said, what's your source from the Gemara? So Yechiel Meir said to him, I'll tell you. He said, there's two Gemaras. There's two Gemaras that discuss two psukim. Each Gemara discusses one pasuk of Torah, and each pasuk talks about a certain number that you have to follow, and the Gemara, the Chachamim come along and they change that number. He says the first case is where the Gemara says that if a Jew does an Avera, a certain type of Avera, like we said, each treif, he has to get Arba'im lashes, 40 lashes, until Arba'im. The Rambam explains in the halachas about lashes that they put a doctor by the lashing, right? And after each lash, the doctor has to approve the following lash. In other words, if it's a person that can't take 40, he gets whatever he can take. One, yeah. But if it's a person that could take 40, so the Torah says you should give him 40 lashes. That's a pasuk of the Torah, a verse of the Torah. The Chachamim come along and they make a pilpul, they make a shakla b'tarya, a whole discussion, and they prove from however they prove that it doesn't really mean 40, it means 39. So over there, Rabbi says, wow, they're a Gavla Rabbah. Those Chachamim are great men, a Gavla Rabbah. Then there's another Gemara that discusses another pasuk. That pasuk talks about Sfiras HaOmer. Sfiras HaOmer, we count the days between Pesach to Shavuos, and it says specifically in the pasuk, Tisparu Chamishim Yom, count 50 days. How many days do we count?
49.
49. It says count 50. So over there, the Gemara is a whole pilpul, a whole shakmatarian. How do you? It says 50. No, it really means 49. So if you feel Michal says, how come over there it doesn't say Gavra Rabbah, and here it does? That's a good question. It's because over there, when they're talking about taking away lashes, you take away lashes from a Jew, you're doing a tova for a Jew. There, you're a Gavra Rabbah. There, you're a great person. That's the proof. So Chaim also liked that. And he said, oh, das is Chasidus. That's Chasidus. That's just a story. Yeah. So the Jew doesn't feel it. He doesn't sense it, that doing the Avera would take him away from Elokus. And if he would sense it, he wouldn't in any way, shape, or form do an Avera. And the previous Rebbe brings a proof. And he says, first, before he brings the proof, we'll just go over what the previous Rebbe says. Lefi shebeteva kol Yisrael. And everyone, you need to remember this, that in the nature of each and every Jew is such, he doesn't want in any way, shape, or form, and he cannot he doesn't want to be, and he can't be, actually, in actuality, separated from Elokus. It's only for a temporary state, right? And in the end of days, when Mashiach comes, and then afterwards also, because when Mashiach comes, so the Rambam says, Olam kiminhago yinhag. The world is still going to go according to its minhag. There's not going to be initially miraculous things taking place. There'll be a revelation of godliness in the world. The Rambam says, Kimayim alayam mechasim, like water covers the seabed. Right? That's a pretty great revelation. Think about it. The seabed is a terrain, yeah, but you don't see it. It's completely covered over by the waters. Vast waters covered over the seabed, and that's how godliness is going to cover over. Is going to be revealed in the world like water covers over the seabed. Nevertheless, the same Rambam says that Olam Kiminhago Yinhag, the world is going to still be conducted according to its conduct. Things are not going to be miraculous. On the other hand, we have a principle of the Torah that there's going to be Tchias HaMesim. And the Rambam also brings that there's going to be Tchias HaMesim. There's going to be the revival of the dead. Now you can't say that the revival of the dead is Olam Kiminhago Yinhag, that's the world going according to its custom. That's obviously a miraculous event, right? That's miraculous. So the Rebbe asks, how is it that there's going to be Tchias HaMesim? There's going to be the revival of the dead. All the tzaddikim are going to come back to life. Va'amech kulam tzaddikim, and the entire Jewish people are called tzaddikim. Every Jewish person is going to come back to life. The Rebbe has a whole sikha how that's going to be. Even a Jew that did Averis is called a tzaddik, because there's gilgulim, there's different incarnations, so the soul comes back down to do a tikkun, and then or there's descendants of that Jew that pray for his soul, or even if they don't pray for his soul, in their merit, he gets some of their merit. And lo yidach mimenu nidach. There's a pasuk in Tanakh that says, I think it's in Chumash, yeah. I'm pretty sure it's in Chumash. It's definitely in Tanakh. Lo yidach mimenu nidach. No Jew will be completely pushed away. Every Jew ultimately is going to come back to life and Tchias HaMesim and rejoin the Jewish people. So the Rebbe says, obviously, we have to deal with this question of the Rambam, right? Where the Rambam says that the world is going to remain in its conduct and there's not going to be miracles, with the fact that there's going to be miracles. How do we resolve this conflict? Tchias HaMesim is obviously a miracle. So the Rebbe says there's two tkufot. There's going to be two periods. There's going to be the first period is going to be the Moshe Mashiach, the coming of the Messiah, Mashiach. And during that period, there aren't going to be miracles. The world is going to run according to its minhag. But then, after a certain point in time, and the Talmud discusses how long that's going to be. It's going to be 40 years. It's going to be 70 years. How long is it actually going to be? But it's going to be a period in time. Once that period of time is over, whatever that period is, so then there's going to be another period, which is going to be Tchias HaMesim. It's going to be a miraculous period. So there's going to be two periods of time. So it's not a contradiction. When the Rambam says, Olam Kiminago Yinag, the Rambam's talking about the first period. And then when the Rambam says there's going to be Tchias HaMesim, the Rambam's talking about the second period. How did we get on that subject? Oh, yeah. So, yeah. So, it's true. It's true. When a Jew does an Aveira, he separates himself from godliness. On the other hand, because it's temporary, and ultimately, whether in this Gilgul or the next Gilgul, actually says the Rebbe says all the Gilgulim are over. Everyone's going to fulfill their mission in this lifetime. Okay? So, but ultimately, every Jew is going to do tshuva. Yeah? So therefore, even though right now he's separating himself, and it's totally true, since it's temporary, yeah, it's not a total it's not a separation forever, right? Because every Jew is ultimately going to do tshuva. But right now it's being separated. Right now in this world, we're living in time and space on Zion Kislev, yeah, Tafshin Pei of the creation of the world. If the Jew doesn't Aveira, he's separating himself from Hashem. But since Aveiras are temporary, because ultimately, that's what I was trying to say. In the second period, so when Mashiach comes and there's going to be Gilui Elokus, so that the evil is going to lower, and the flame of evil is going to get lower and lower and lower until ultimately the gas runs out. There's not going to be evil anymore. Hashem is going to be Ma'avirat Ruach Hatuma Min Ha'aretz. We say it in Rosh Hashanah, in the davening. Hashem will remove the spirit of evil from the world. There will be no more evil. And then there's going to be Tchias HaMesim. What caused death? Sin. What sin? Evil. Where does sin come from? Evil. It comes from the force of evil. But when the sin is eradicated and evil is eradicated, death is eradicated, and then there's going to be a Tchias HaMesim. Hello, Shalom. So, and then when death is eradicated, and there's going to be Tchias HaMesim, and there's going to be no more evil, and all the tzaddikim are going to come back to life, and the entire Jewish people are called tzaddikim, right? So even though they sinned in a particular time and place, on Zion Kislev, Tafshin Pei, Chas v'Shalom, That's also going to be eradicated. It's temporary. So therefore it's real, but it's not real. It's real right now. And right now, when the Jew sins, he's separating himself from a Kodesh Baruch Hu, and he's not allowed to do that. And if he would realize that he's doing it, he wouldn't do it. But ultimately, there's going to be a tikkun. It's going to be fixed. So it's real, and it's not real, but it's real. And the Frierdiker Rebbe says, "B'haraya." What's the proof that a Jew would never sin if he sensed that he was separating himself from godliness, and he doesn't want to, and he can't? Oh, so I was saying, why does it mean he can't? It means he can't because ultimately evil is going to be eradicated, and the godliness that's in him is going to become, the filth is going to be removed, and then it's going to be revealed, the godliness that's in him. And what's the proof that he doesn't want to and he can't? The proof is the kasher ba'al idei nisayim. When it comes to a test, the kaifin oisai chas v'shalom al inyan shel kfira, and the non-Jews come and they try to force him to worship idols, to deny HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and to accept other gods. Da'az efshar litot, and then it's impossible to make a mistake. It's impossible to think that by doing this, I'm not going to become separated from godliness. In other words, it's revealed that by doing this, I'm going to be separated from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Jew gives up his life. And he accepts upon himself all the tortures that they give him. And he gives up his life on the Kiddush Hashem, on Kiddush Shmaya, on sanctifying God's name. Al Kiddush Shmaya Yisbarach, and sanctifying God's name, may he be blessed. The Kain Nira B'Muchash, and we've actually seen that, Mamish, in history. Gam afilu b'dargos v'apechusais, b'kal sh'v'kalim. Even amongst those who were if you would look at the way they behaved, they were behaving. You wouldn't even think they were Jews the way they behave. They're the Kal Shebekalim, the lowest of the low. They too gave up their lives when it came to a situation of Mesiras Nefesh, where the Gentiles said, "Kiss the sword, or you'll die." So, as kiss the cross, or the sword will kiss you. They chose the sword. We see that over history. We saw that. Because what's different than than other Averas? There, the spirit of folly doesn't have any power over the Jew. The spirit of folly can fool a Jew. Folly, it fools you, right? That's why it's called the spirit of folly. It can fool you into thinking that by doing an Avera, you're not getting cut off from Hashem, you're not disconnecting yourself from Hashem, but only up to a certain point. It doesn't have the ability to fool a Jew when it comes to actually worshiping idols or worshiping other gods. There it doesn't have that spirit of folly doesn't have any power. Then the Jew, it becomes clear to the Jew, but if I do this, I'm separating myself from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And even though he's been living a non-observant lifestyle, he knows he's a Jew. Wow, all of a sudden something happens within him. All of a sudden that spark of holiness that's been hidden in the dirt, in the mud, and in Golus, all of a sudden it overpowers everything. And he says, "No way, I'm not doing it. I don't care what you do to me." And we see it over history that's Jews that weren't observant, didn't live an observant lifestyle and did Averas. They're called Poshe Yisrael because they did a lot of Averas. They gave up their lives when it came to this type of a test. Because then when it comes to this type of a test, then all of a sudden it becomes known and felt in his soul. The Eino Roitza, and he does not want Chas v'Shalom lipart me'elokei Yisrael, and he doesn't want, no matter what, to become separated from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because in this, to become, God forbid, separated from the God of Israel, no Jew has this ability to do this. But in other things, in other matters, in other tests, Hari b'shari averis, Rahman litzlan, and other averis, may Hashem protect us. Hari eino yodea ve'eino margish, shenasa yodei the nifrod me'achdus ha'yispar. He doesn't know and he doesn't feel that he's becoming, that he's separating himself from HaKadosh Baruch Hu's oneness. V'nidmelo, and it appears to him, ki oid b'yaduso kasheraya, that he's still in the same Jew that he was. V'zeh ba'amei aruach shtus, and this mistake comes from the spirit of folly, the sitra acha, that comes from the other side, the side of evil. Shemachasa alahor v'agilui shelo yirugash bo, that hides over the light and revelation of godliness that's in his soul, that he shouldn't sense it at all. How are we doing on time? I think we're good. Pirush, he's going to elaborate a little more. Any questions up till now? Pirush. The haruach shtus garim loyla adam heder hergish. The explanation is that the spirit of folly causes the person to heder hergish, lack of feeling, numbness, causes them to feel numb. Person is not going to stick their hand in fire because they know it's going to burn. But if it doesn't burn, and they don't see it's a fire, they're not aware of it. Because the power and the desire, the pleasure in their fulfilling their physical and material pleasures, the nefesh of amis, and the heatedness, the enthusiasm of the animal soul, that when a person allows his animal soul to hold sway over him, that causes a coldness and a feeling of numbness in spiritual things. Pirush. This is a Yiddish expression which I'll try to say properly. Baruch Hashem, in this Sefer, it gives a Hebrew expression. Die Zugebundigkeit und die Zukechtigkeit in Inyoni Chemde V'Taivas B'Reticha, that the person's connection and his boiling desire and his taivas, zemekarer hahergish, the hair und gefühl, that cools down his feeling and his awareness of godliness, of spiritual things.
Okay, so you have all this numbness, you have all this separateness. You go to chakras the next.
Depends on the person's level. Yeah, you could go to chakras the next day, and then right after chakras, you could do an avera.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying you should go and.
Of course, you should go to chakras. I'm sure you should do a mitzvah. I'm sure, of course, you should learn Torah. Mitoch lo lishma bo lishma, that the godliness that's in Torah and mitzvahs, yeah, will affect him. He can ignore that effect. He can ignore that tiftuf. You know, there's drops of seichel, there's drops of wisdom, there's drops of clarity, there's drops of good thoughts and good feelings that come to a Jew all the time. Just like there's maybe gushes of bad thoughts and bad feelings that come to him. But those drops of clarity, he can, if he grabs them, if he grasps them, the time that they come to him, and he enlarges them, he thinks about them. That's what brings a person to tshuva, right? What brings a person to hirurei tshuva? All of a sudden, the person, out of the clear blue, he starts to feel, wow, I have to do tshuva. And he does tshuva. And if it's gushers of bad thoughts, he can just push them away. Just close the faucet. I mean, it's not going to prevent the thoughts from trying to introduce themselves again. But like the mashal of like we see b'muchash, yeah, that if someone, like we see in actuality, yeah, with a baby, for example, right? If a baby's crying, obviously you're not supposed to ignore the cries of the baby. But when a baby gets older, right, and a baby wants something, but the baby doesn't need something. The baby may want a bottle of sweet thing or something sweet. Baby may wake up in the middle of the night for something sweet, right? But all the baby really needs is liquid. The baby just needs some water. So if you give the baby water instead of milk, Materna, which has a sweetness to it, the baby's not going to like that. The baby's going to cry. And the baby may cry for a half hour, right? But the next night, the baby won't cry for a half hour. The baby may cry for 15 minutes. By the third night, the baby will whimper a bit and then drink the water and go back to bed. Same thing, if someone comes to your door and you don't want to let him in. So the first time, he'll knock and knock and knock until you open the door. And if you open the door, he'll come back. But if you don't open the door, he may knock for 40 minutes. But eventually he'll go away. And then he'll come back and he'll knock for 5 minutes. And then he'll just knock. And if you don't come right away, he won't come. But he'll keep coming. Those we can control by training ourselves to think properly. And to when bad thoughts come in our mind, to push them away, to recognize. But you first have to recognize what they are. To be a balabas on yourself, you first have to recognize, wow, I'm having some bad thoughts. Hashem doesn't want me to have negative thoughts. He doesn't want me to think bad about this person. Someone's speaking Lashon Hara. Yeah? Hashem doesn't want me to listen to that. I don't want to listen to that. I don't want to think bad about my fellow Jew. You can push the thoughts out of your mind, and if you train yourself, the thoughts will try to get in, but you won't let it. But on the other hand, the Zucker Wunderkeit oder the Zuckerkeit und Inyan Yachem de Betaiba Bereticha, this connection and boiling passion that a person has. We'll finish this paragraph and then we're done. It's Mikara the Hergesh. This passion that he has for physical things, it cools off the feeling that the hair and the kafil, it's like a seesaw. Yeah, if you're feeling really into physical pleasures and passions, whatever they might be, you're not going to think about spiritual pleasures. And if you're really into spiritual pleasures and you're getting a feel and in their hair for Inyanim Ruchniim and the spiritual life force you want to connect to, so the physical passions they're not gonna hold sway over you as much. They'll still try to get you to pull you down, but you're gonna be if you're on fire, yeah, they can't burn you. You're already on fire. If you have enthusiasm, there's a halacha about a liver. A liver, kaved. When you kasher a liver, it's not like kashering other meat. Other meat, it's enough. You soak it and salt it, and then it's kosher. Yeah. But by a liver, it's kulo dam. The liver's filled with blood, so you have to make it shesi verb. You have to make a crisscross on both sides of the liver, and you have to put it over a fire and let all the blood drain out. So the halacha talks about, what if there's a liver underneath? What's going to happen? The liver now is getting that blood from the liver above. So the halacha is that kibalo kachpolta, that even though it might be getting blood, as soon as it's getting the blood, it's expelling the blood because there's a fire underneath it. So when a Jew's on fire for ruchniistic things, right? So the Yetzer Hara is not able to get to him because he's lit up. And we have to be lit up with ruchniistic things, and that's by learning Torah and doing mitzvahs and doing love for a fellow Jew. And Bezrat Hashem, the Rabbi is here, so I've overextended my time, and we'll see you next week, Bezrat Hashem.
Thank you.